A Black Cat. Short story written and narrated by K.B. HURST. The white coffee mug with the gray and blue markings was the only thing I had left from the house that I had lived in for 20 years. I lost my house after it burnt down, leaving no trace of anything from my past. It was like it had all been wiped away, my entire existence, with one flame. Gary, my husband, and we moved 45 minutes away to a town called Ipswich in Massachusetts. It was a 2-story colonial on 5 acres of land. My closest neighbor was a mile away, and to be honest, it was quite peaceful to come home to a permanent vacation home. There was a little pond in the back, and it was suited with a lush garden of wildflowers. The home even had a small greenhouse off the sunroom. It was a lovely place to call our home after such a tragedy of losing everything in that fire. This weekend, though, would be the first time in over a year since we moved that I would have the entire house to myself. Gary was leaving for Miami for a business trip, and in the past year I had suffered a great deal of PTSD and anxiety, so he was worried about leaving me alone. I often felt afraid of something, and I know now that what I was afraid of. It was just always there, this fear after the house fire. I started having panic attacks that were really mild at first, and then night terrors soon after the fire. My psychologist did prescribe me plenty of Xanax to get me through my panic attacks, but Gary was still concerned. I reassured him that I would be okay for the weekend. "Kath, are you sure you're going to be fine?" he asked me as he was about to get in his car and head to the airport. "I swear I am. Just go and hurry back." I kissed him on the cheek, and he seemed to be content by my reassuring words. "Hey, leave that dirt pile to me, by the way. I'll take care of it when I get back. It's got a lot of shoveling, and I don't want you to pull a back muscle. I'll leave it alone, trust me. I want to work on my herb garden in the greenhouse." He smiled, and then he pulled out, leaving me alone. It was strangely quiet, and I tried not to think about it. The birds were chirping and the air smelled pleasant as I tended to the lavender in the front yard by the white picket fence that stretched the length of our property. I was humming a little tune and then realized over 4 hours had passed with me trimming bushes and relocating the hosta plants. It was a warm day, and I was growing thirsty. The rest of the gardening would have to wait till later, perhaps tomorrow even. I needed a break and some water. I went into the house, closing the giant black wooden door behind me. I took off my shoes and gloves and then sat them on the bench in front of our staircase that led up to the second floor. I went into the kitchen and opened the fridge, pulling out some water with lemon. I grabbed my cell phone off the charger and saw a text from Gary saying he had made it to Miami with a photo of a tropical drink. I laughed and texted him back that I was glad that he was okay. Something stole my attention away from Gary's text. There was a scratching sound. I paused to figure out where it was coming from. It was not stopping. It was only getting louder and louder. It got so loud and more persistent as I stood in the hall between the front entrance of the house and the kitchen. It finally stopped, and then I went back to pouring my water in a glass with ice. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and took a deep breath. I was tired suddenly and felt the need for a shower. As I went up the staircase, I heard it again. It was coming from the front door, that damn scratching. I opened the front door, and no one was there. I went to close the door, and then I heard it. Meow, meow. I looked down, and there was a beautiful black cat sitting on my front doorstep. I smiled at his little green, yellowish eyes as he looked upon me with such seriousness. "You must be lost. Are you trying to find your way home? I think you've come to the wrong house, little kitty." I said, bending down and petting the sleek black fur. It meowed again, and its paw touched my hand. The cat was very pretty, but I was never really one for animals of any kind. I once had a bird I kept as a child, but it died after I forgot to close one of our windows. I woke up to a stiff bird that night that had frozen to death. I'd felt so awful afterwards, I swore off pets for good. I thought perhaps he needed some water, so I shut the door, leaving it a crack, and then finding a little porcelain bowl. I filled it and then sat it back outside on the porch. It just stared at me instead of drinking. Sorry, kitty cat. This is the best I can do for you right now. I bet somebody is missing you. Go on, shoo. I shut the door and went to walk up the stairs. And the scratching began again. Oh, Lord, what could this animal possibly want? Maybe it was hungry, but I knew better than to feed stray cats. Once you fed them, they would never leave. I didn't need some cat expecting anything from me. I opened the door, and he ran into my house. Oh, Lord, what now am I going to do? I chased him into my husband's office. I found him sitting on top of my husband's desk. I picked him up and noticed he had a yellow gold collar that matched his yellow eyes. It was wrapped around his neck like a sleek necklace. It was a little fancier than you'd expect from a stray cat, so I knew he belonged to someone. I read the tag and the name, which said Wexley. Wexley is your name, is it? Well, Wexley, I can't have you in my house. You must be hungry, though, and I think I have a can of tuna in my kitchen. I was amused at his infiltration of my living space. I opened the can of tuna and he smelled it, appearing at first very ravenous in his sniffing air as I sat it down in front of him. He again stopped, though. He didn't eat. Instead, he looked at me again with those curious yellow eyes. Well, if it isn't food and water you want, what is it, my little friend? By now I was growing a little impatient. He bolted once again towards my husband's office, and I again ran for him. This time I ran to the sound of a loud crashing noise. When I found Wexley this time, he was crouched by a drawer and a photo that had crashed to the ground. It was a work photo of my husband and his two other colleagues. There was a tall blonde woman on the left whose name I knew was Jill, and on the other side of him was a short, heavy man by the name of Barry. The glass was cracked in half, and I sat it straight back up again. I noticed there seemed to be a piece of paper sticking out from it, but I didn't pull it out just then. I needed to get this little intruder out of my house. Okay, Mr. Wexley, you are no longer welcome in my home. I picked up the cat, petted his little head gently. I opened the front door and sat him on my porch. I closed the door behind me and headed upstairs to finally take my shower, which was long overdue. It was roughly after 9 p.m. I had heard no more scratching from Wexley the cat, and I assumed he finally went home. I was sure there was someone out there expecting him. I was reading in bed, trying to relax and not think of the fact that I was alone in a big house when I heard it. There was a loud sound coming from downstairs. I anxiously got out of bed to see what was the matter. I opened my bedroom door and crept downstairs slowly. I listened for any sounds, and then I heard a loud knocking. It sounded like a cupboard banging against a wall. I peeked into the kitchen, but it was silent. The sound appeared to be coming from my husband's office. I went into the office, and the window was wide open. The large window opened from inside, not from outside. It was hitting the wall behind it over and over. There was a strong wind that had picked up outside, and the rain had already begun. I once again found myself picking up the photo of my husband off the ground, and I went to grab it. I jumped in my stance and nearly fell over from shock. There, under the desk, was Wexley. This cat was starting to get on my nerves. He must have come in the window when the wind blew it open. They say if a black cat crosses your path, it's bad luck. But what about breaking and entering? He looked at me again with those curious yellow eyes. He meowed loudly this time and spun himself in a circle on the photo before I could pick it up off the ground. I took a deep breath, bending over to grab the photo. I pushed Wexley off of it, and as I did, the paper that was behind it fell out. I picked the cracked frame, but before I could pick up that paper, that damn cat grabbed it in his mouth and jumped out of the window. Wexley! I didn't know what it was, but something in me had to find out what it was. I put on my rain boots as quietly as I could and ran out the front door. I looked around, but I couldn't find Wexley. I felt insane chasing after a damn cat in the dark and the rain. What was I thinking? Thunder cracked alongside the lightning as I ran out of my garden. I was drenched, and what a sight it must have been, crouching in my flower bed, practically on all fours trying to find a black cat because he stole a piece of paper from behind a photo. That's when I saw it. There was something shining in the dirt pile that Gary had said he would take care of when he came back home. I walked over to it as the lightning lit up my backyard. I could see the initials J.S. It was on a metal triangle illuminated by lightning striking the sky in the distance. I picked up what I thought was a bracelet with a little triangle on it and looked closer. Where had I seen this before? I know I had this bracelet, but where have I seen this bracelet? Then it dawned on me. When I turned it over, Wexley, it said, and I knew then and there it wasn't a bracelet. It was Wexley's animal tags. But who was the JS? And I looked closer and could not see an address. That too was covered with dirt and grime for me to read it. I stopped thinking about it and realized I was being covered in mud. The dirt felt like it was sinking just a bit, and it felt like there was a hole underneath of it. I began to sink in deeper. I found myself settling on something hard beneath that felt soft when I stepped on it. Oh, God. I managed to get out of the sinking hole of dirt, and I took Wexley's tags back into the house. I took off my wet boots and marched straight to my husband's office. I picked up the broken picture frame and managed to slide my index finger on the broken glass. Of course I'd slice my finger. I sucked on it as I managed to use the other hand to slide the photo out of the remaining part of the frame. There in front of me was Jill, wearing a bracelet similar to the animal tags I found in the garden. Wexley's tags. At least it appeared to be similar. I could be just seeing things. Alone in a big house, thinking that harm is coming to me from every corner. Her name was Jill Simmons. She had been a colleague of Gary's for years. As far as I knew, she would be on the trip with Gary. So what on earth was this? It didn't add up, and I figured I would just give up for now and go to bed. I turned off the lights in Gary's office and made sure the window was shut and locked. I was sure Wexley was gone, and I was sure that most likely the last I would see of the strange little intruder. I placed the photo back in the frame, taking out the glass. I tossed it in the wastebasket, and I just figured I'd buy a new frame the next day so that Gary wouldn't even notice. By the next morning, I awoke to a sunny day and I got out of bed, washed my face, brushed my teeth, dressed, and went down to the kitchen to make coffee. As I was descending the staircase, I heard what must be someone walking in the hallway by my husband's office. I panicked. Someone had broken in. I slowly snuck around the balcony at the top of the stairs, and the sight was quite shocking. It was Gary, and he was poking around in his own office. I wanted to yell down and ask why he had ended his business trip so soon, but something told me not to say anything. I don't know why, but it was like someone was telling me to be as quiet as I could be. I felt mildly paranoid, and my heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. I saw him looking around his office for something. He was trying to be as quiet as possible, like he didn't want to disturb me. Then I saw him come out of his office with the broken frame and the photo. I saw him look up towards the stairs, and I hid. I have no idea why I hid from my husband, but I just did. Why was Gary home? He was in Miami as far as I knew. I had just received his text yesterday afternoon. As soon as I thought what I heard was the side door close quietly, this wasn't like him, and I started to wonder if I had been hallucinating. I grabbed my phone and sent Gary a quick text. Hi, babe. How's your morning so far? So far here, so good. I immediately got a ping. It was him texting back. Oh, hey, honey. In a meeting now, but I'll call later tonight to see how things are going. Do you miss me yet? No, I thought. I just saw you snooping in your own office. I texted back something like, yeah, I love you, or something, and threw my phone down in annoyance. It was Gary, I was sure of it. And it was so puzzling to me. I figured in my bedroom for a while I could figure out what was going on and just think to myself. My mind was going in 1,000 different places. I just kept staring out my windows to see if I could see anyone outside before I left the house. I began to have doubts when I didn't see any sign of Gary. Shit. Maybe it wasn't Gary. Maybe it was an intruder and not Gary after all. I had so many thoughts racing through my mind. I felt like I might be going crazy, and I searched for my bottle of Xanax to pop a pill before I went downstairs. I slowly walked downstairs and peeked into Gary's office. The photo that was on his desk was now missing. I knew he had been here, but why did he need that photo? My thoughts were interrupted by the scratching at the front door again. Oh, Wexley. I ran to the front door and opened it. When I did, he ran out into the garden. What the hell? I called for him by name, unsure as to what this cat wanted. One thing I was for certain, I was having the strangest weekend home alone. I followed him out to the garden just like I had done the night before, and I saw him sitting on the same pile of dirt. He had something in his mouth, and then he dropped it. It was that paper. But how? I quickly grabbed it up and saw it was a letter written very crudely on a piece of notebook paper. I unfolded the letter and went to sit on a bench in my garden that faced the large pile of dirt before me. Gary, once again it pains me to have to write to you. I have warned you once, and I am warning you again. If you do not turn yourself in for what you have done, I will, and better yet, I will tell your wife. I no longer want to be with you after what you told me the other day. I believe it's fate that your wife survived your first attempt on her life. Did you not ever wonder why she survived that fire? I believe in fate, Gary. Just as I believed in the love that we once shared. It isn't worth the money. You think that we'll be making off of her life insurance. It will only cause people to be suspicious of us. I am no killer, Gary, and I believe you aren't either. I will be at our familiar meeting place today. That beautiful garden you said reminded you of me when you bought the house. I'll be waiting on the little bench at our usual morning time while your wife is at therapy. Please, Gary, think of what I'm saying. Just know that I love you too much, Gary, to ever let you hurt yourself or to hurt anyone else. Love, Jill. I stood from my spot by the bench, and then I looked at Wexley. I walked over to him and looked at his yellow eyes that were so serious. I picked him up, rubbing his head The only way I knew to thank him for saving my life. Behind him was that pile of dirt, and as I looked closer, I knew then, how, I can't say, but I knew then that Jill Simmons was buried in our backyard. I held the cat in my arms as I looked at the spot, sickened at what I now knew, but I was forever grateful for Rexley. He was a messenger sent to me from the oblique darkness on the other side. The last word from Jill to stop Gary from finishing what he had started all those months ago with the fire. I don't know why I hadn't seen it sooner, but it all made sense now. I believe Gary was trying to use this weekend to tie up loose ends. I knew I had time to get the authorities involved because Gary hadn't figured out what I now knew. I had no idea what kind of end Gary had in store for me this time, since fire hadn't worked. I believed I was the luckier one between Jill and I. As I now looked upon a second pile of freshly dug up dirt that wasn't there yesterday.